This opening is literally free ELO. It starts with the move d4 and you play for the checkmate on the very first move. Can you imagine that? We are gonna place both of our bishops on b2 and d3 and try to deliver a checkmate. Let's see if we succeed with that. The second step is knight to f3. Then we play the move e3 so that this bishop is ready to go, and we don't care that we shut down our own bishop because we want to place it here anyway. We play bishop d3. This system works whenever they play d5 at some point. The only exception is when they play g6. There I recommend another setup with the move g3 that is also covered in the playlist on this channel, as well as in my 10-day opening mastery, the opening course, where you can build a complete lifetime holistic opening repertoire both for white and black all in one course, and get a full month of live coaching with me completely for free. It's included in the course. So we place the bishop on b2 so that we are ready to play this move knight to e5. That is the key idea, and in general we put as much pressure on that king as possible. We are not really that in a hurry with the castle because there is no danger he can create for us anyway. So let's maybe play this move knight to e5, just make sure that there is nothing wrong that can happen to it because it's in the center, it's controlling so many squares. After knight to 7 we can even just play knight to c6, working the queen and the bishop. And I mean, getting a pair of bishops, I'm usually always happy to do that. Or we can just stick to the plan and play f4 anyway. So just remember this knight e5 move. This is your key move. You want to always make it because it stops all of the counterplay from your opponent. And then f4 goes hand in hand because it supports the knight and everything is rock solid afterwards. Okay, let's try. Let's say that he could have played bishop b7, not allowing that anyway. And I just want to show you the key plan here that normally always works. And that's what we are doing. Then we are going to castle and start creating those threats against the king. For example, this rook might come to h3, and we can even sacrifice the bishop over there just to get to the king. Finally, we castle. There are different ways of how we can create threats. That queen can go to h3, g4, g5 is an interesting idea. But first, let's develop our rook. We can play knight d2, just in this variation where they play bishop b7, and there is knight to e4 possible. I'm less happy about that variation because I don't want to just allow it like that. And also be careful with this move c4, because sometimes I also blunder it. They play c4, and if you take it twice, then your rook is hanging. Still not the end of the world because they have to give up this beautiful bishop, but if we can avoid that, that is even better. So we just play rook h3. Now after c4, we are still happy to exchange it. And otherwise, bishop takes h7 is actually might already be a threat. Maybe like knight takes d7, queen takes, and then bishop takes, knight takes, and queen h5. How do you stop the checkmate? You cannot defend your knight, and if you move the knight, then queen h8 would be a checkmate. That is why he plays h6, just before it's too late. We are playing against 2000 ELO rated player, so pretty strong. Top 1% of all of the chess players on chess.com, and if you can beat such a guy, then you're ready to use this opening to crush everyone. How do we continue from here? Whenever they play this move c5, there is a plan to open up this diagonal for the bishop. I promised you that both bishops are very cool for this checkmate to happen, and this is exactly what we can do here. We can immediately play knight takes, queen takes, and then pawn takes, and this bishop is opened up, and both of our bishops are attacking. The one thing is, yeah, it works even better if the bishop is there, because in the end we are going to take, and he has to take with the pawn, and that is basically a checkmate. Here he has this bishop, which makes it a little bit simpler for him. Anyway, I think the plan is cool. I mean, it's not like it can disappear from us, because if they ever take, we can just take it with the bishop. But maybe to make sure that it's all possible, that they cannot take with the bishop there, because we take there, maybe it's time to do that. Knight takes, they don't have time for c4 or something, because they're going to take with a check. Alternatively, we could have played knight to d2, of course. That was a normal way. But we're going to do it anyway. Maybe one thing I missed is the fact that Because the bishop is there, it protects the knight. He takes with the pawn now, and then he wants to play d4. And that's gonna shut down my own bishop. I don't want that. Maybe to stop that, we can play bishop to e5, making sure our bishop is outside. So he cannot do anything. And then even this g4, g5 idea might be possible. There is another thing I don't like. He can play c4, again, this move. He actually takes with the bishop. It's very brave, but I don't see the point. I think it's just checkmate now. This is what happens. This opening is so powerful, you put so much pressure on your opponent, and then sooner or later he makes a mistake. It would have been more interesting after pawn takes, but here you can see exactly how powerful this attack is and how it works. At some point, we just exchange this bishop for a knight because we want to ruin this pawn structure in front of the king. And then there is nothing he can do. If he takes, I play queen to g4 check. He cannot go to h7 because of the bishop. After king h8, rook h6 is literally checkmate on the board after just 15 moves. Can you imagine that? So probably he's not gonna take, but then we have just won the knight for free, and obviously we continue our attack. The bishop c5 is not the move you could have made. You have to always think about your opponent's threats before you make your move. And always start with the most active pattern, which is checks and captures. Okay, d4, how do we deliver a checkmate? We can just continue capturing it, sacrificing the bishop, but that does not create, an immediate threat. He has time, for example, to take, threaten it too. We don't need that. So instead, I want to play queen to g4, which adds another attacker. It's always the more pieces you can add to the attack, the better it gets. And secondly, it creates an immediate threat for the opponent, very dangerous, checkmate in one, so that he doesn't have time to do something active on his own. Always wants to be in the driver's seat, create as many problems for your opponent as possible. And now after g6, there is no other way to stop it. We can both play rook takes h6, threaten rook h8 checkmate, or just bishop takes g6. So here is it. Let's play another game against a very strong opponent and see how we can handle different variations from black. For example, he plays d6, and that is an exception. Whenever they do not play d5, like not at all, then we switch, because most likely they are going to play g6, we switch to this setup with the bishop on g2. So in one video, you're gonna see how to handle absolutely everything your opponent can do. Either you go for this setup against d5 that I have shown you in the last game, or you go for this fianchetto, because against this pawn on g6, this pawn formation, the bishop is not really that great, right? And so it's much better here, specifically for the reason as well that there is no pawn on d5, so the entire diagonal is opened, and you still place your second bishop to b2, so it's not that different, and you still fight for the initiative in the center. Yes, you do not play for the checkmate so early, because with this pawn formation it's just not possible, so we rather focus in the center, but no worries, we are gonna get to checkmate. This opponent is much stronger, and yeah, he plays the King's Indian. Very fascinating opening, but this setup, I really like it against King's Indian. I covered that in the course, 10-day opening mastery. Don't forget to take advantage. On the website, you can read reviews, how it changed people's chess forever, and how much of a progress they have got after the course. Please take a look at that. And you get a 100% money back guarantee. You have absolutely nothing to lose, because I truly believe in my course and how it's going to change your life. So I covered there this line, which I also played against Fabiano Caruana, one of the best players in the entire chess history, and I almost made a draw. In the end of the day, he tricked me with the last pawn. He had like a bishop and a pawn against the bishop, but the opening went really great with this variation. And the point is, we play c4 and we fight for the center. We play knight to c3 and maybe e4. Let's see what happens here. He plays d5. Yeah, that is a possible way to go, but he wasted the tempo. He played d6 first and then d5, and that is generally not something you want to do. Let's just play knight c3. We are always happy to exchange, because then we are going to have more pawns in the center, more opportunities to just go forward and destroy our opponent. All right. Yeah, we always want to fight for this e4 pawn move. He's very solid here, but at the same time pretty passive. Look at this bishop on c8. you cannot even imagine how it can get out. So I want to make e4 possible, maybe bring my rooks to the center. We want to develop every single piece into the game, and also just not waste any time. To achieve that, there is a golden principle: one piece, one move. And so far, I have done just that. I'm not moving one piece twice unless I have developed everything, or I have a very good reason to do that. Okay, c5. I don't like that at all, because he played d6, d5, c6, c5. Instead of spending just 2 tempi to achieve that, he wasted 4. That cannot be fine for black. I mean, you cannot play like that. Time is the most important resource in chess. The question is, how do I use it? I want to take the d5 pawn, but I have to calculate the variations. You never ever want to make a move without thinking what your opponent can do in response, because you might miss something very important. If he just takes, this is perfect. I'm gonna just play rook d1 and fight against this isolated pawn, or just take it immediately. But I'm concerned about the c takes d instead. But then I can take with the knight, and if he takes here, I take with the knight, and my bishop protects this guy. So I think c takes d is exactly what we should do. I definitely want to ruin his pawn structure and take advantage of the fact that he wasted time in the opening. You never ever want to waste time in the opening. And in chess in general, time is the most important resource. Okay, he takes with the knight, but it doesn't really change anything. I can still take and leave him with this isolated pawn in the end. I do exchange quite a lot of pieces, but I'm strategically much better in this position. Also, I'm better in terms of the development, so I think it's worth it. After he takes, not sure why he's taking so much time to take the knight back. Here, I'm not obliged to take immediately, actually. I might start with the move rook to d1. Because there is nothing he can do. c4, I'm gonna just take it. b6 doesn't help, I just take it anyway. Well, let's play rook d1. You don't want to make it simple. If you are just forcing the variation, then at least your opponent understands what to do. But here, he has to take the choice, and whenever he does that, there is a chance he's gonna make a mistake. Queen f6, I mean, that is kind of a hope chess. Right now, he's dealing with the threat tactically, my bishop is hanging. But as soon as the bishop is protected again, I don't understand the point of this move. For example, I can start with the move rook to c1, and like, your knight cannot move, because I'm gonna take with the queen. And if the knight cannot move, the bishop cannot move, which blocks the rook, so it also cannot move. What on earth are you gonna do? And I'm just one tempo away from playing something like bishop a1, threatening just to take here. He wants to develop the bishop this way. I'm just thinking whether I should play bishop a1 or bishop a3. Because both moves seem pretty interesting. Here, the bishop is pinned on this guy and threatening to take, but here I am threatening this discover attack, so he has to go away with the queen. Then I take over there, and then this d5 pawn is in trouble again. Well, at least he gets out with his entire plan. We have to admit that. Let's play bishop a1. Be consistent. Because if bishop a3, then he can continue with his plan. And that is something I want to avoid with every single move. I want to improve my position and at the same time create a problem for the opponent. So after bishop a3 and bishop b7, if I take, eventually he's going to have this rook c8, forking or pinning my queen. I don't like it that much. And here, if he cannot play bishop b7, this is the big advantage of the move. And then that means he cannot develop new pieces. He has to deal with his queen. But that is another tempo he is wasting here. And now it's time for me to take. I cannot wait anymore. And also I don't want to wait anymore because this d5 pawn is hanging. Yeah, it's a little bit annoying that I have to go back with the rook, wasting some time. Well, actually I'm not. Then I'm really happy to take it so that my rook is still on the c-file where it's much more active than on a1. And I still can grab this pawn. I don't see anything wrong with it. I have this check, but it's better to leave the check for the future whenever you need it. Rook takes d5. Yes, he can win a tempo, but I can also win a tempo. Rook to e5, threatening the queen, protecting the pawn. And then at some point I want to play b4 to get rid of this knight. I think rook e5 is the most active. Now that you are one pawn up, it's important to convert this advantage. It's never too late to spoil even a winning position. So you have to be careful. First of all, always think about your opponent's opportunities. For example, he's threatening here bishop takes f3 and then winning this rook, which is not a great thing. Maybe I have underestimated it. Queen is going to f6 yet again. Maybe it was better to play queen c3 check first, after all. So that such an idea wouldn't be possible. I would have rook c5. Maybe I can still play b4. And the point is, if he takes, I take it. He takes here, I take the rook, he takes back, and then in the end I take over there. e2 is also hanging, I don't know. Not entirely sure about that endgame. But I'm pretty sure my rook would be good on e3. It's covering the open file, it's covering the third rank. It's very active. And b4 is still coming. Yeah, maybe one disadvantage is he has this move. But I'm ready to exchange queens. I think that is gonna help me. By the way, maybe I could have started with the move queen to c3. 94. Yeah, 94 was annoying. Okay, rook e8. That is annoying as well. Because he wants to take and completely ruin my pawn structure, but if I take, then this pawn on e2 would be vulnerable. And if I play e3, I lose my knight. I like how my opponent is playing. Even though he's a pawn down, he tries to fight through the initiative, which is the most important thing in chess. Something you should do as well. So b4 doesn't work. Takes and then b4 is probably better, but he's still very active. I'm thinking instead I want to play queen to c3. Because if he takes the queen, I'm always happy, even just rook c takes back, I'm a pawn up in the endgame. And if he takes here, then I can take with the queen, stopping him from playing rook to e8. The pawn is protected. I still might play queen to c3 back, exchanging the queens. Everything is solid. He doesn't really have any ways to create problems for me. Okay, he takes. Now, unfortunately, taking back with this rook is not that great. I'm losing a pawn. So I have to take here. And yeah, this rooks might not be ideal. For example, he can try to take advantage of the back rank, but I guess I'm going to immediately go back and deal with the back rank, stopping that. Yeah, a5 is also a nice move. Somehow it's a little bit complicated. Even though I'm a pawn up, my opponent creates a lot of threats. That is why he's a strong player. I'm thinking whether I can play knight to e5 here. But I have to calculate lines. Takes, rook to d2, knight to c4, he takes here, I take there. I'm attacking the knight. I'm afraid I might exchange too much stuff and it could be a draw in the end of the day. I don't want to allow that. So maybe instead I play that, so that I'm always ready to meet rook d2 with rook c2. And that should solve all of my problems. Let's try it. If he plays rook e8, this time I do have the move e3, not being afraid of any tactics with the knight. The knight is protected. It goes there. I thought whenever he opens up this c file for me, it cannot be bad. I want to play rook c7. I mean, it has some drawbacks, this pawn is hanging, but I can even play just e3 and knight d4, but also this knight is hanging. So after bishop there, I can play knight e5, threatening here. I don't see a really good follow-up though. But I like the move e3. Now I really want to play knight d4. That move basically wins the game, or nearly wins the game, because I attack here, just forking all of the pieces. It actually goes for the exchange in a situation where I'm a pawn up, clear pawn for nothing. But also, I can just start with the move knight d4. I see no drawback. My rook is better. So after takes, I still have this threat knight e6, and it's there anyway. Maybe he wants to play knight c5 though. But then I was wondering if I can play that, rook takes and knight e6, probably not. Yeah, knight c5 is a good move. Probably I should have exchanged all of the rooks instead. And I cannot play knight e6 now because he's gonna take and this bishop is protecting everything. Yeah, that was a mistake. All right. We are still up on up. We are still better. But our rook is hanging, so I have to either go here, which is kind of annoying for him because he doesn't have a good spot for the bishop, and the knight cannot go away because I'm gonna take there and then here. And the rook is still very powerful along the 7th rank. Some variations I even want to play bishop h3 because this rook has no squares along the c file. And I'm basically just threatening rook takes c5. The idea is if he takes with the rook, I play rook takes a6. If he takes with the pawn, I play knight a6 check, then I take the rook, and then in the end I take the bishop, and I'm in exchange up in that. Or even a piece up. The rook takes c5 is a big threat. No, there is one thing I blundered here. No, it's okay. Yeah, it would have been okay. He plays knight d3. But that, I thought, is losing. Maybe he has in mind to take back with the bishop and stop knight e6. That helps, but I can start with knight e6, right? Maybe it's not that great, though. Because my rook is hanging. I mean, to say the least, I can play rook c to c7 here. And actually get the position I wanted to get in the first place. Yes, his knight is on d3 instead of e4, but it does not really bother me. I'm still incredibly active. Or I can take and make him take with the bishop. And then play bishop d5 and be very active. I mean, that cannot be bad, right? His rook is passive, his bishop is passive. Let's play bishop d5 just to make sure this rook cannot activate itself. Knight e6 is kind of an idea right now. Okay. Yeah, the bad thing, I plundered that pawn. Somehow I blundered too much tactical stuff. See that I'm making mistakes because I'm a human being. But yeah, that pawn is quite important. I don't like. I don't like that I missed it. I think my position is still much better, but it wasn't necessary. Okay, let's play knight to e6 check, forcing the exchange. Because I think in the end I should win the pawn back. And I'm going to have a bishop against the knight in a situation where there are pawns on both sides of the board. I just need to make sure he's not able to exchange my last pawn. It's just not that easy, actually. Ah, he's still thinking. Maybe he has an option of going backwards. No, that wouldn't work. Yeah, takes. Okay, he goes back immediately. I think this is just the same. Although I don't understand why wouldn't you go forward. In the endgame, you always should try to activate your king, make it as active as possible. Whereas there, the king is absolutely passive. And now my idea was to go back to c4 so that I still control all of this. And after knight takes, I have rook b7. The most important thing is I want to stop him from exchanging the pawn. So after knight c3 and takes and a4, I do not want to take. That would make it simpler. Yeah, that's what he does. I instead really want to play b4, but the question is, can I do that? Probably I can't, actually, because I'm not threatening that pawn anymore, so b4, of course I want to play rook a6, and then everything is great. But he even have rook c8, yeah, that's actually really bad for me. Probably I have to take, but then it's going to be more difficult for me to convert the pawn on one side of the board. Still, I'm a pawn up, I'm more active, so that is a good chance. Also, his knight is a little bit weirdly placed on a4. But yeah, it's not what I ideally wanted. Maybe rook c6. somehow stop this knight from going back into the game because I cover those squares. And if he goes somewhere with the rook, still after rook c7, he has to go back just to save that pawn. Ah, that is why he plays this. This is again smart. I like how resilient my opponent is. So the point is, if he would have played rook somewhere before, then I have rook c7 attacking here. But now, whenever I go, maybe d5 is an exception, because he can go and attack my bishop, but at least I have the move e4. And then the bishop and the pawn are defending each other, which should help. The drawback is he can play rook d7 and free his rook. Okay, he does it anyway. Yeah, that was a little bit, maybe it was better to play instead of rook c6, rook b7, just to make sure it's never possible. Knight c5, play rook c7, but you know, this knight is active, so it has drawbacks too. Okay, he wants to play f5, so I want to play e4 before that is possible, so that after f5 I have e5 and I create a password. That would be very dangerous, but otherwise this pawn is still very vulnerable. And I can even continue with f4, e5, and eventually I want to bring my king towards the center. Should be careful with the knight. The knight is very tricky, especially in fast time controls. Yeah, he's already preparing this fork, for example. So I want to start with the move rook c7, creating a counter threat. Because if I allow exchanging the bishop for a knight, or the knight for a bishop, 4 against 3 is normally a draw. Although here I'm very active, so I definitely would have good practical chances. But I have a pretty good bishop, so for now... Ah, wait, he can do that. Yeah, well, it's not totally great for him. Or maybe it is. I thought I can take, and he cannot take with the rook because I have bishop before, but he has rook c5, counter-attacking my... I don't know, somehow I miss a lot of tactical chances for my opponent, which I don't like. Yeah, f5 is a very good move. I cannot even play something like rook c3, attacking the knight with an idea to play 5 because he can just take it. This is very annoying. I can play f3 to maintain my passer, but then I have a blockade on the e5 square, which is very annoying. Probably it's still the best, because if I take, I don't have a passer at all. So let's go for it. If he plays knight e5 now, I have f4. Maybe not, knight f3 and takes. At least I have king g2 defended. And if he plays knight e1, that feels to be too risky for him. I can just take and then play bishop e4, and this knight might stay there. Okay, knight to b4 instead. I don't like this move, to be honest, for him, because the knight is again somehow offsides, not where it should normally be. I like some weird idea of playing bishop to f7, because I just want to play e5, e6, and promote my pawn. And probably the best thing he can do is just go backwards. But maybe I should stop him from going there and play bishop c4, but then he has takes, and rook e8, and how on earth do I defend that pawn? So yeah, bishop f7 is needed. Stop him from doing that. In g7, then I'm gonna go bishop c4 and e5. Actually, not so fast, because he's gonna get to f6, but then this pawn is hanging. Knight a6. I really don't like what he's doing. Yes, I get I get that he wants to get there, but I'm gonna get e5. That is already an achievement. Let's play rook a7 so that he still can take, unfortunately. doesn't. He has prepared that. So I cannot play 5. Wait, but this is the move repetition, right? Very weird. How do I actually make progress? I can take the f5 pawn now in a situation where he cannot take with the rook. That is already kind of an achievement. The more pawns I exchange, the simpler it gets for my opponent. Okay, I'm gonna repeat moves just once to see if he is gonna play knight e6 again, because then I want to play rook e7, and I feel like that is an improvement for me. Yes, let's do that. Because now, when he plays knight c6, oh, this is still annoying actually. I thought I can play e5, and after knight c6, play something like rook e6, and the pawn is protected, but my bishop is hanging. Not gonna work. Yeah, and also he can take now. At least I have a passer. Yeah, he changes his plan completely and tries to be active, but that is dangerous because now I might achieve what I want to achieve. The question is, how do I do that? Probably starting with the move e5, so that after king g7, he doesn't have this f6 square at his disposal, and I could really go away to some good square, and he has to maintain his king there very passively. I'm okay with losing the pawn. Maybe I can also save it, but essentially, if he helps me to bring my king closer to the action and his rook is passively on h2, that shouldn't be bad for me. Rook c7 is not something I have seen, but maybe it's also not really bad for me. Because I have check, and then bishop away, and rook g8 check, and this pawn is moving. So if I exchange, I think that is a relatively easy draw. Maybe not, because this pawn on e5 is so annoying for him. Very, very instructive endgame. So if I take, he takes, I play bishop c4, or maybe king f2 first, king g7, bishop c4, and then I go all the way here, and maybe he's gonna go there and claim that I cannot make any progress. Is that true? Maybe it is. He's gonna just jump around with the knight. Wait, I can even play rook e8 check and then e6. That might be dangerous. I might also just... Yeah, let's go for that. But instead of e6, allowing him to play king f6, I'm gonna play something like bishop, I don't know, bishop b3 maybe, so that I can play rook g8 check and then e6. And his king is out, not participating, because the king in the endgame is a very important piece. I'm not sure what he's taking time for. He only has one legal move. He wants to chat. He offers me a draw. Interesting way, instead of, you have this button to click on the draw. He writes it in the chat. Why on earth would I accept the draw? I have a pawn up. And the question is, where do I go with the bishop? Because if I go to d5, he has rook c5, which is maybe not the end of the world I have here, but I actually want to maintain the bishop here. Actually, the more I think about it, e6 also makes sense, because if he goes there, I'm going to attack that pawn. If he goes there, then I'm going to attack this pawn. It's difficult to defend everything. Maybe he wants to go back and forth and say that I cannot make any progress again, which might not necessarily be true. Let's play e6. At least this way everything is protected, and I'm just 2 squares away from promoting my pawn. So if he goes away with the rook, for example, I don't know, something like rook a8 and e7, I just win the game. Yeah, that is why he brings his knight somewhere here. I want to play g4 and g5, because that literally threatens checkmate. I really like this idea. If he plays knight d5, for example, g5, how do you stop the checkmate? Okay, he goes there. But that is already kind of an achievement for me, I feel, because now his king is away from the action, which is good. The question is, do I play h4, trying to stop it from going forward, or... Yeah, probably I should play that. I'm hopefully not afraid of rook c4, because I'm going to play e7, and... or maybe g5 check first, and then e7. And that feels very dangerous. Knight e5. Okay. What if I play rook to d8 now? Where is this knight go? Because if the knight goes to e7, I have rook to d7. And I think the endgame is winning for me. My king is too far away. Of course, I'm happy to bring it, but I feel like I never have time for it. I have to be active to create those threats. Knight is 3, okay. Let's play g5 check to make sure he cannot go backwards. Here the king is so far away from the actions. And then I want to play rook d7, and I don't get how you stop it without losing anything. I mean, that does not make any sense. It's gonna just take and take here. Rook d7 is my point. Yes, you can give me a check, and I'm gonna go away, and you can even give another check, but sooner or later the checks are over. How do you stop e7 and e8? Just a queen. Gonna promote. In f2. Never go to the side, always try to go towards the center. Also, I cover the e1 square just in case, I don't know, so the rook cannot go here like knight f5. Yeah, this is basically a sacrifice. The question is, do I go for it? Yeah, maybe the problem is he's gonna grab my pawns afterwards. That is annoying. I cannot win such a nice game. Do I have an alternative to e7? Don't really have any time. Rook d5 doesn't help, just knight e7. Yeah, let's play e7. Let's win this knight and see what happens. Takes, king takes h4. Would be the continuation. Okay, he can give a check, but I don't think it changes anything. I mean, you don't have time to take here because my pawn just promotes. Right, so he takes, I take it back. Now the question is, can I save this pawn? Because if I can, I'm just winning. But I'm afraid he has some annoying checks. Or... Yeah, I don't see it. I don't see it, which means I probably should go for that and try to win all of the pawns and then win the game bishop, rook and bishop against rook, which is an amazing endgame. Very complicated one. Stake with the bishop, so that the bishop is already attacking the pawn. Ah, okay, he just wanted to stop me from giving a check. But how do you stop me from rook to g6? Ah, you have king h6. That was stupid. The beauty of this position is I have like 100 moves to do whatever I want to do. Because there is a rule that 50 moves, it's nothing For 50 moves, I can do whatever I want. It's not a draw. Then if no pawns are moving or taken, then it's going to be a draw. But in 50 moves, chances are this pawn is going to go forward, or I'm going to win it. Something is going to change. For example, I just play king to g5. How do you stop rook g6 check? Probably he's just giving up the pawn. Although I think he could have defended it. Okay, now if I take with the bishop, that's an immediate draw. So I have to take with the rook. Then I can just go away, or even give another check. Yeah, let's give this check. In g3. In the bishop. I mean, this is such a complicated endgame. I have lost it most of the times I have played it. I normally played against very strong guys, so it made it more difficult, but this is a really complicated endgame. The point is simple. I need to get him to the side of the board and then create as many threats as possible. And there are multiple ways black can try to defend it. Wait, here I have a check. Okay, I already got him to go to the H file, which is... that feels like a progress. Now I need to bring my king. Without the king, you can never do anything. Maybe rook g2 check was important, because now he can play rook g1. Okay, he doesn't go for it. How do I bring my king? This is not such a trivial question. Fortunately, I have 0 time at all. Okay, let's start with the move king d3. After all, my opponent also doesn't really have a move, right? Maybe sooner or later something like that would be possible. Yes, bishop f3. If he goes to this side of the board, then I go back bishop f4 and king to e3. And of course, I need to go closer to the king. Okay, that is what happens. I feel like it's already very near to being just completely winning. Let's start with the tricky move rook g5, so that he cannot go there in the right moment, because it's going to be a checkmate. Yeah, the problem is he can go there now. It's a bit annoying. Yeah, that was stupid, actually. Okay, let's go away. Because I don't want to blunder my rook now. As after king to f2, rook check, and there he could have just taken it. Okay, in f2. And maybe now he goes king h4. That's the problem, that my rook is not there to deliver a checkmate. Right. Somehow there should be a way to make progress here. Maybe bishop f4 and king f4. I hate this endgame, especially from the defensive side. From the attacking, of course, it's much easier. You have nothing to lose and you hang around and try to create as many threats as possible. But from the defensive side, trying to understand all of the threats, it's super complicated. Now, after king h6, Why do you offer me a draw? Of course, no, I don't agree. Why on earth should I agree to a draw? I don't get it. So after king h6, there is rook g6 check, and he cannot go there And if he goes backwards, then hopefully I'm making some progress. Rook g7. So that... Wait. Okay, bishop f5. How do you stop checkmate? Rook h7. I mean, you go away, okay. Now rook h7, you have rook h6. Bishop g4, you have king g6. How do I win it? I feel like it's very close, but... How do I actually... How do I actually achieve it? Checkmate. Maybe just put the rook to the other side of the board. Let's say here. Or maybe here. Somehow I hope that this is gonna help me in some of the variations. Maybe relocate if he goes to h6, because I'm threatening checkmate. And I have king f5, bishop e6, and king f6. It doesn't feel like making a lot of progress, though, I have to admit. How on earth does it work? I don't know. King f5, bishop e6. Let's try to remaneuver here. He's gonna go back to h5. If he goes now, then maybe I have... No, then there would be a check. Wait, I go here and he cannot go to h4 because of the checkmate. I'm threatening checkmate. Yeah, maybe it's the same thing. He plays rook b4 and threatens to have this defense. Right. How on earth do I make progress? There has to be a way to make progress here. I don't see it. Why is it so difficult when you're playing with the rook, but when you are on the stronger side, I don't know what to do. I have 1 second. I can't even lose the game. I'm not careful with the time, so... You can even go there? This feels so wrong to have your rook over here. Sometimes you do want to repeat the position once or twice to see what your opponent is doing, because chances are he can make a mistake. Like here, rook g8 is threatening just to win the game, and you cannot go away with the rook because of the checkmate. And here I have this... wait. If I make a check... If I make a check, he goes back to h3. So I need to go all the way g7. No, wait. Now he can just escape with the rook. Yeah, that's a pity. But that feels so close. Okay, maybe now. I'm threatening checkmate. Rook king h4 does not help, it's still checkmate. So the only... no, rook f4. Stupid move. Yeah. It's not leading anywhere. Is it really that simple? I mean, I thought he was completely lost, and I'm pretty sure he was, but I'm just not finding it, apparently. I don't know. No, that is definitely no progress. How on earth do I make progress? Of course, the fact that I don't have any time makes it tougher, but still. At some point, the 50 moves are over. Not gonna be able to win anyway. Okay, now I bring my king there. Maybe if it's like closer to the corner, it's going to be easier. And g8 probably is a wrong square. I've gone here. That same idea, but the king is very far from h6, so it probably doesn't matter. And I want to play king f4. You don't even have that many squares. You cannot go here, and you cannot... Yes, he goes there to have this check, but the rook on f6 again is very weirdly placed, right? I don't know. Let's play that. Whoa, tough game. Right now I'm threatening checkmate, rook h8, so he has to do something, right? Okay. Now he has to go here. Then the question is, how do I make any progress? Maybe rook g5. I just defend my bishop and I want to get closer with my king. Why not? Oh, that is a bad square, I think, because he doesn't have this check. I can play king to f3. After check, I can play king to f2. Yes, he goes there to get some checks. But now I can somehow relocate my rook. I don't know. That feels again pretty close. It's still not simple. Let's do that. Let's change something, because if you change the viewpoint and it's like I'm gonna attack from this side and he's going to be cut here, maybe it's going to be more difficult for the opponent and going to be harder to find all of the right moves. I mean, obviously this is a theoretical draw, but I do my best to create those threats. For example, rook f6, I think, and winning after king g3. You can take, but then rook d1 check. And mate. And if he goes here, then I have bishop d3 with an idea to play king g3 and again mate. Maybe he's gonna play rook a3 check, bishop d3, and then rook back. But then I have a cute move, bishop to e4, threatening some discovered checks. It's definitely not easy for him. He has a lot of time. That is his advantage to figure out what's going on. But like practically this endgame is so tough because 50 moves is a lot, and I can create 28 threats. Puts so much pressure on the opponent. And if he solves everything, yeah, well done. You've deserved your draw. Yeah, that's what I expected. Try this move bishop before. Probably still rook g8 is the best, just not to allow my king to get here. No, he goes there. Wait, that cannot be good, right? He's arguing that it's still not losing for him. Maybe actually I have made the wrong decision. I was too fast. Maybe king e3 was better because then I'm pushing the king all the way here, away, and something like bishop d3. Or even rook h2. Rook h2 was possible. Okay, but that is also very close. Like bishop f3. I'm threatening checkmate. This check bishop g4. He goes back. Why is it so complicated? It seems that he still survives, unfortunately. How do I make progress? Maybe I kind of wait a tempo so that his rook on a less desirable square. But yeah, he still has a lot of squares. Rook f1. Okay, that cannot be good. Ah, he's preparing this trap. Bishop f3 and rook takes. But I cannot believe that can be so good. First, what if I just play bishop f3 here? I think this is... Ah, no, now rook f2. Wow. Wow, this is huge. This is huge. What if I go away? And like try to checkmate him from this side? Ah, there is this famous rook g2. I should have given a check first. Check and then rook a8. Yes, this is stupid. Now I'm basically allowing him to escape. Check, maybe not entirely, because if he goes here, I go to e3. But if he goes here, that is checkmate. That is a checkmate. Whoa! A draw! One move before the checkmate! Oh my god! This is literally checkmate next move. Into g1 and rook h1 checkmate. Wow. That is hilarious. But let me take a look. Maybe I had an easier way to checkmate him. Wow. He actually never ever was losing in this endgame. Everything he did was absolutely correct. Like this rook f8 is a mistake, but it's not a real mistake because there is still no winning for me. Wow. My opponent defended it really well. But in the end, it was winning for me. The engine still says 0, 0, 0, 0, just because it's 50 move rule, but it is a checkmate. Crazy. I hope you enjoyed this game. Still, I have got a very good position after the opening. Don't forget to grab your limited spot, a full month of live coaching with me completely for free if you join 10-day opening mastery today, lifetime opening repertoire, 100% money back guarantee. You don't risk anything at all. The link will be in the description. In this playlist, you can learn so much more about this endgame and how you crush everyone under 2000 ELO thanks to it.